What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson here. Wanted to kick off today's show by taking a look at yet another draft prospect, a guy I think offers plenty of intrigue for the Chicago Bulls, and that is center slash forward Thomas Sorber out of Georgetown. The freshman one and done player there at 6'10", 250, 255 pounds is a very sizable offensive threat. I think his stats at the age of 19 in his freshman year at Georgetown were very solid. He scored 14 and a half points a game, pulling down 8.5 boards a game there. He's projected to be a mid-first round pick here, most notably taken number 17th overall to the Minnesota Timberwolves in a recent mock draft done by ESPN there. So he's a guy, if the Bulls want to take a swing at a center, I think he makes a ton of sense there. Now, if you have guys like Derek Queen or other options available to you in terms of talent, I think he may lose that edge to those guys. But Thomas Sorber is a very intriguing guy. He draws comparisons of guys like Jonas Valanciunas and like a Yusuf Nurkic, I would say, and a little bit of an older player there, a guy, I don't know if you guys remember Roy Hibbert there. He was a very solid NBA center for Indiana for a while. This guy and Thomas Sorber draws a lot of comparison to that. I think his physicality, his interior scoring, and his rim protection are three elements to his game that stand out to me. I think he's a very solid option when it comes to bringing that physical presence, and he offers the scoring touch as well. He showed that in his lone season with the Georgetown Hoyas there. So keep an eye on Thomas Sorber there if he gains some traction for the Chicago Bulls with that 12th overall pick. He's an immediate impact guy. I think as a defender, he has a long-term upside in that department of the game, making him a fit for teams needing youth, size, and defense in the front court. So makes a ton of sense for what the Bulls are looking for. I just think, a guy with that combination of production makes him one of the more intriguing big men in this draft class. So Thomas Sorber, a name to look out for. Kind of switching gears here to a guy we profiled just a few episodes ago, but Ace Bailey. There's some turmoil surrounding this young man. He did cancel his workout with the Sixers that was set for Friday today. And the Sixers surely aren't going to take that lightly. I think it's a very interesting and, head-scratching approach there when it comes to Ace Bailey. He's kind of handled this whole draft process in an unorchestrated way. I just think now if you're the Sixers and it comes down to picking a guy like Ace Bailey who cancels your workout, and you have a decision to make between selecting him or a guy like VJ Edgecombe at 3, failing to make that draft visit and that workout could be the deciding factor if you're Philly. Now, with the talent level of Ace Bailey, I don't think he'll slide down very far when it comes to doing that. But, agencies, it is worth noting as well, agencies going into this NBA draft appear to be more focused than ever on putting their players in a specific situation when it comes to setting their guys up. So they want to land their clients in an organization where they can carve out quick playing time and make an immediate impact. And, Ace Bailey will certainly have no issue doing so, but that could be part as to why they don't necessarily see him fitting into certain situations there when it comes to Ace Bailey's agency. So I think, like I said, it's a long shot for the Bulls to land a guy of this repertoire. He's a guy who is going to probably slide no further than, I'd say, the top 7, maybe. I mean, I don't even think he gets that far. I think if the Sixers do end up passing on him there, you're going to have teams like Utah and Charlotte who are probably going to take a long, hard look at snagging a guy like that. So, it's worth taking a look at if you're the Chicago Bulls. And we talked about this if you want to make a strong push up the draft board to select a guy like this. But news like this coming out, him canceling workouts prior to the draft. I mean, we're not even a week away from the 2025 NBA draft taking place. So, a bit troubling there, and that was some news that I wanted to kind of circle back on, given that the Bulls are expressed to have interest in this young man. So we'll take a look at that as we move closer to draft night there. Definitely something that makes you kind of look and is troubling there. So moving on to some more troubling news. If you're the Chicago Bulls, I kind of wanted to, do a little bit of a rewind here with the 2020 NBA draft and the Bulls selecting Patrick Williams. It's been, it feels like an eternity since the Bulls have taken a guy like that because of the slow production that they've gotten out of him. So it's been a trying time for the Chicago Bulls when trying to get Patrick Williams acclimated and get him to make a jump in his NBA career. It's been troublesome, and it's selecting him at the fourth overall spot there in 2020 leaves a lot of Bulls fans with a lot of heartache there. And I think it's up to this point, it's you can't fathom the fact that they took a guy like that fourth overall. In that draft, obviously we remember the T-Wolves taking Anthony Edwards first overall. So realistically, they weren't going to select him. James Wiseman hasn't really panned out either, and he was taken second overall in that draft, and then LaMelo Ball. So realistically, those top three guys weren't going to slide to the Bulls at 4 in 2020, but it's worth noting, and kind of why I bring this up, another immaculate NBA Finals performance by Tyrese Halliburton. He was selected 12th overall in that draft by the Sacramento Kings there. So I just think if you're the Bulls and you look back at this draft, it's a reminder. And granted, you're not going to pan out on every pick that you make in a first round, but picking a guy of the magnitude of Pat Williams, 4th overall, is probably the Bulls' worst pick in 10 years. It's a decade-long decision that will probably hamper this team, at least in the short term, as a thing that, kind of sets this team back. So, you even have guys like, you look at Obi Toppin, very productive player in Indiana right now, has made a very solid impact on this team in their playoff run. He went 8th overall to the Knicks back in 2020, was impactful in New York as well before he got flipped to Indiana there. I think when you look at this, it's a reminder that you need to do your diligence when it comes to picking guys at the top of the first round there. Now, the Bulls aren't in that position this time around, picking at 12 there. They have some solidified prospects, I think, and some safe plays when it comes to some draft picks that they could take at 12 here. But just want to do a little rewind there and talk about what 2020 meant to this team and how that pick has continued to give the Bulls trouble as we move into yet another season here with Pat Williams fresh off of that extension. So, and I kind of wanted to, talk about Pat Williams there because he is a guy who you would hope they could try and plug into some trade scenarios here. I think, kind of leads me into my next scenario here. The Bulls and the Raptors are picking at the 9th overall selection in the first round, so just a few spots ahead of the Bulls there in the first round. But what would it take to get a guy like, and I've kind of talked about him previously, but RJ Barrett? Would that interest Bulls fans? Let me know what you guys think. I am very intrigued by a guy like RJ Barrett. Now, he is a little more expensive than a player like Pat Williams and what his contract entails, but in this trade scenario I want to take a look at, the Bulls would receive guard RJ Barrett, and the Raptors would, if you could swing it and get this to happen, you would send Pat Williams and guard Javon Carter along with the 12th overall pick to Toronto for RJ Barrett. Now, is that too much for a guy like RJ Barrett? Let me know what you guys think. I think it's on the fringe of being a little bit too much of an asking price for a guy like RJ Barrett. Now, RJ Barrett, what you get for Chicago as an upside in this deal, you get a far more nightly box score production, especially in terms of scoring, out of a guy like RJ Barrett. He's a box score guy. He puts up numbers. He scores the basketball. He's done that ever since he's broken into the NBA. And that's something that Pat Williams has had trouble doing. So, and if you're the Raptors, you would get yet another first-round pick to go along with your 9th overall selection. So they'd pick 9th and 12th in the first round. Just something to throw out there. I wanted to see what you guys thought about that scenario. Javon Carter, obviously a guy who a very low impact player in the Chicago Bulls this past year. They will most likely try and move or get rid of him anyhow. But if they're willing to do this, and knowing how hard it might be to move a guy like Pat Williams, I'm kind of spinning off that draft rewind there. I wanted to visit this trade scenario to see your guys' thoughts and if you think a guy like RJ Barrett is worthy of that decision there. So we'll keep an eye on all that stuff there. We'll see if any other trade scenarios and rumors pop up as we inch closer to draft night there. Very exciting Game 6 of the NBA Finals last night. I mean, Indiana, of no surprise, they show up in a big way at home, backs against the wall. This team is really on a special run. Tyrese Halliburton playing through and grinding through that calf injury there. Another big night. So, going to be exciting to see how a Game 7 pans out on Sunday night in Oklahoma City. Game 7, the two best words in sports. I just think it's a very exciting way to cap off the NBA season here, and as we head into the draft and kick off the summer league here in a few weeks. So, want to thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Bulls Latest. Let me know in the comments what you think on that mock trade, as well as your thoughts on what it would take to maybe shoot up the board to take Ace Bailey. Is he worth it? And would Thomas Sorber be a guy you'd be interested in seeing in the black and red there with the Chicago Bulls? So. Thank you again for joining me on Bulls Latest, and we will see you guys next time.